Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this very special day today on the 16th day of May. Well, it's 16 degrees and cloudy. And it is, well, in fact, right in the city, it is raining at this point in time as well. It has been raining all morning today. Well, ladies and gentlemen, right now, let's get into the news for today and let's see what's making news. First of all, news in brief.
People are dead in a huge hostel fire in New Zealand's capital, Wellington. The fire broke out overnight at the Loafers Lodge Hostel. 52 people have been accounted for, but the death toll is expected to rise. The hostel housed a mix of short and long stay accommodation. Australian banks are launching a new platform to prevent customers losing more money to sophisticated scams. The Fraud Reporting Exchange is being launched by the Bankers Association today. It aims to speed up reporting of suspect payments between banks to catch the money before it's been withdrawn, sent overseas or converted to cryptocurrency. Two people have been killed in a car crash overnight in Melbourne. Police say a black BMW sedan hit a silver Honda at an intersection at Caulfield South just before 11 p.m, forcing the Honda to roll. Police believe speed and disobeying a traffic signal were factors in the crash. And a search and rescue mission continues this morning off the coast of southern Queensland for a man missing at sea. His companion was found yesterday floating north of Gari, Fraser Island. She was airlifted to Bundaberg Hospital in a stable condition. The pair sent out a distress call Sunday evening when their yacht began to take on water. Some of the residents impacted by toxic chemicals which leaked from military bases are unhappy with yesterday's multi-million-dollar class action settlement with the Commonwealth. More than 30,000 people across the country will receive a share of almost $133 million for losses in property values.
So there was this news in update. Well, right now, we were looking at those scammers and all those scams and other things. These are the new threats of this generation, and there are so many people who are vulnerable, who get caught up in these schemes. What is the government going to do about that?
Fantastic announcement, and we welcome the government's investment in the National Anti-Scam Centre, but what we're going to see real traction and real change in the scams crisis in Australia if we have investment by industry, so by banks, investing in prevention and detection measures to stop scammers reaching consumers, reaching the customers. And we say that the only way to incentivise financially the banks to do that is through mandatory reimbursement laws.
Now, without such laws, when you hear terms today like early intervention and hit squads, what effect do you think that would have in the current environment where we're seeing so many scams?
Yeah, look, hit squads are going to be part of the picture, but it's such a broad and huge problem at the moment in Australia, and so plenty of scams are still going to get through to customers, to consumers. What we need to see is real investment, banks who have their windfall profits at the moment using some of those profits to invest in measures that protect their customers. So again, things like confirmation of pay technology, other technologies that pick up if there might be fraudulent or scam activity happening and prevent those payments from going through.
Are there any changes that have been made overseas that we could implement here?
Yes, so in the UK, and we are far behind the UK model. The UK has mandatory reimbursement laws, so we have a template there that we can adapt to Australia. So in the UK there is currently a voluntary code requiring reimbursement of scams losses for bank customers, and that's currently passing through Parliament to be made mandatory across the banking sector. There's also other parts in the code around, again, technology to prevent and detect scams, again recognising that that's where we ultimately need to stop the scams from the wave of scams that are coming at consumers. So yeah, we can definitely look to the UK model, and they've got some good traction over there in terms of making mandatory the reimbursement laws.
It's such a point of discussion, though, isn't it, as to how liable banks should be. So, I mean, as you've said, there needs to be investment by industry, there needs to be some liability to spur them into action. But there are also some cases where there is, gross negligence on the part of consumers. Where are we on that scale, do you think, and where do we need to be?
Yeah, so the UK model, and I think it's right, has a gross negligence test. So essentially, if a customer is scammed through no fault of their own, they should be reimbursed. And that's also the UK model, and that's what we think should happen in Australia. But we had a recent ASIC report published just last month showing that scams losses in Australia are extraordinary, and the major banks are reimbursing just 2 to 5% of scams losses in this country. So it's a really low bar, and it needs to be lifted quite a long way to reach that no fault of their own limit that we say should be in place.
And I guess it's a bit more clear-cut when there's one bank involved in a scam against a consumer, but scammers know that if they can go through several banks in the process, that really does blur the lines, doesn't it?
Yeah, look, it does, but it's nothing insurmountable. There could be sharing between the sending and receiving banks, for example, as one option. But what we need is a solution and something to stop the tide of scams losses in this country, because we're a soft target. We have such a swift payment system with no friction in the system. So as soon as the money is transferred into, say, a mule account, it's whisked off and washed through crypto or whisked off into the scammer's bank account overseas. So, it shouldn't hold us back. We need to be investing in preventing and detecting the scams so that they're not reaching the consumers in the first place.
Yeah. And Stephanie, as to better education, which is clearly needed, do banks have a role to play in that for their customers?
Look, I think any way that we can get information out to customers, to all Australians, is really important, and I think that's going to be a big part of the National Anti-Scam Centre as well. But again, the scams that we're hearing of on our frontline services are incredibly complicated, using AI technology to impersonate a loved one's voice. So education's important, but we can't blame the victims in this discussion. It needs to move upstream. We need investment in better prevention and detection.
Better production is what's needed, and of course, these are new and uncharted territories, uncharted waters, but these are the everyday threats that we face today now with the advancement of technology and everything, so we need to be ever so vigilant. Well, right now, moving on to, meat, when people are looking at the sort of meat, and for many reasons, which is getting off the table these days. Some people are going vegan and otherwise health benefits and other things. But we know that it is very, very important that we get the enough supply of the vitamins. Where else can we get that from?
We know that the price of meat is increasing. We know that people are under significant financial pressure when it comes to their household food budget, so they are looking for cheaper alternatives. Mushrooms are one option, but mushrooms are very nutritious, but they're not the only option as a meat replacement. So there are plenty of other foods that we grow in Australia that are excellent replacements for meat, such as lots of nuts and seeds, legumes and beans, like kidney beans, are really high in protein and an excellent replacement for meat.
Has there been any other trends or changes with people's shopping and diets due to the cost of living pressures?
We know that there are trends in Australia in general, so people are looking to more plant-based foods. They're not necessarily becoming a vegetarian or a vegan or following those sorts of dietary patterns, but they are looking to reduce their meat intake, not just because of the cost. The cost is a big factor, but there are other factors that come into play when people decide on what to choose in their what to put in their trolley. So things like the environmental impacts of food we know are influencing food choice, ethical reasons. People are wanting to support local farmers and local food producers. So all these decisions are really changing the way that Australians are purchasing food and eating.
Yeah, I was going to say, is this all bad? If we go back to the mushrooms, they have a wide range of health benefits. Does changing up your diet, maybe having some more plant-based alternatives, a good thing for your overall health?
Absolutely. So adding more mushrooms into your diet is a great way to increase dietary fibre. They're packed full of other vitamins and minerals. And they're also one of the only foods that naturally contain vitamin D, which is great going into winter. What we know is that there are lots of other vegetables that are considerably cheaper than mushrooms that are also highly nutritious, and it would be good for Australians to increase them if they have access to them. But one thing that I wanted to mention about this piece on mushrooms and that being a replacement for meat, mushrooms have quite a meaty texture and can have that flavour, but we know that really simple swaps that may be more affordable for Australian families, such as swapping half their beef mince for just a tin of brown lentils, can significantly reduce food bills if people are eating beef mince often, but it can also increase dietary fibre intake and reduce people's impact on the planet.
What are some other ways that people can save money when shopping?
Trying to choose foods that are less processed, so not needing to buy foods that are ready to eat, those foods that are often don't need any cooking, just heating up and eating. So if they're going back to more whole foods, so looking at buying whole vegetables rather than vegetables that have been pre-chopped, and really looking for more of those plant-based proteins. And like I said before, it's not about cutting meat out, it's about increasing the amount of plant-based foods on your plate, and it's really a win-win for your budget, for your health, and for your environmental impact.
There you are, up to date on Australian Indian Radio. Well, right now, for sort of our finishing segment, let's go to New Zealand to like a look at that disaster.
I think it's a really concerning development, and obviously our thoughts will be with all of the firefighters involved and all of the victims of the terrible tragedy that's unfolding in Wellington this morning. Wellington commuters will be feeling the impact of that. Of course, we're expecting widespread disruption to that part of the Wellington area because of the road closures and roadblocks and so on. But obviously it's a really tragic situation. There will, of course, as there always is, be an opportunity to get to the bottom of what's happened and why it's happened. But for now, I want to particularly acknowledge the firefighters who have been putting themselves in harm's way over the last however many hours in order to try and get people out of the building. Yeah, as I said, there'll be plenty of time to look at that. I mean, I'm very reluctant to comment on sort of anecdotal reports. There will be a thorough review of this, as there is in these sorts of situations. There will be an opportunity to test whether or not this building was fully compliant with all of the rules that it needed to be compliant with. But obviously the focus right at the moment is supporting our firefighters to actually get the situation stabilised, to get people out of the building and to get the fire out.
Yes, it is a very, very unfortunate circumstances. The building was all compliant, everything was aboard, but these things do happen. Well, the last news for today, let's go to Victoria, where the MyCard company is putting a new company which gets the contract.
These cards will soon be tapping out.
Oh, really?
So
no.
much
That's
better.
going to be like
That's
a million
so
times
much better.
I think it's a great idea. Wonderful. Been waiting for it for a while.
Next year, trials will begin allowing commuters to use credit cards, mobile phones and smartwatches on all public transport, including school buses and V-Line services.
It'll be the most seamless, simple solution for Melbourne and modern-day public transport users.
The Victorian government has signed a $1.7 billion contract with US firm Conduent, replacing current Myki operator NTT Data. But the new system won't be fully rolled out for another 2 years.
2 years too long. I reckon it's way too long.
The benefit now in 2023 is that you can do off-the-shelf products that have had testing, the bugs ironed out and things like that.
It must clearly come from a very high shelf because they're going to need a long ladder and a lot of time to get to it and bring it down to Victorians.
Since being introduced in 2012, over time and over budget, Victoria's Myki system hasn't had the best track record. Long plagued with problems, it's also faced criticism over its inability to accept credit cards, unlike other states and countries.
I'm from Sydney, so I'm like so used to having on. It's really frustrating not knowing if I have money on my card.
We have been here 5 days and we couldn't sort it out going back to Tasmania.
Under the updated system, commuters will still have the option of using physical MyKey cards. The new contract will begin in December.
We wish the new operator luck. They're going to need it.
Leanne Wong, ABC News, Melbourne.
And luck is what they will need, but what a wonderful system that would be, because in this current day and age, with all the technology, people should be able to just tap and tap off with their credit cards as well. So no use having, multiple cards in your wallet and, then heading out of the home trying to find the right card that you have that or not. And also not knowing what's on your card, whether it's been charged, recharged or not. So that will be a way of the future. Well, ladies and gentlemen, right now let's take a look at functions and events taking place right here. Today, well, ladies and gentlemen, up to date on Australian Indian Radio. Hey, it's been wonderful having your company, and there's been just so much happening out there in Brisbane. We'll try and bring you. And don't forget that every Tuesday now we go live from the Gayatri Mandir in Boondall. So last week we did a trial run, just to try it out, and it seems to be okay. So we'll be back there again tonight to see how we go, and we'd like to get your feedback on that. So don't forget that Tuesday nights now we will be going live from Gayatri Mandir in Boondall from 7 p.m. Well, and ladies and gentlemen, until the next program, it's goodbye from us.